This is the Business Stuff Podcast. This is where I will share the lessons I've learned from advising thousands of businesses over almost 30 years. Each episode will give you practical insight to allow you to learn from other people's mistakes. I'll be pulling in experts from our team and the world of business, and together we'll make sure your business is giving you what you want. My name is Martin, and this is the Business Stuff Podcast. Hi, it's Marty from the Accelerator team. I'm here again with Jack. Hi, Jack.
Hello. That's really underwhelming, wasn't it?
Hi, Jack. No,
yeah, I'm high energy, sorry.
I'm thinking of who I've just remembered last time. Hi, Jack. I like that.
Oh, God, not again.
Hello, Jack. Doesn't work with hello. We're here to talk about seeing systems. So this is an idea that was developed by someone, wasn't it?
Yes, Barry Oshry.
And is it systems in a particular area?
It's more about the human side of things, which is quite interesting. We talk about systems and processes normally being kind of, a
functional thing.
Yeah, written down on a piece of paper. More about
human interaction. How hierarchies interact, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, I would say.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's handy. Good. So is it worth setting out where what we think or what Barry thought?
Yeah,
the key groups are within hierarchies.
Yeah, so I think once you get beyond,
he names them, doesn't he?
Yes, and we're not taking responsibility for the names.
His names.
In a certain context, they can sound quite condescending. But yeah, once you get out of the one-man band sort of sole trader sort of where you're working as the only person, like a general hierarchy forms across most businesses.
In most areas, it's not just business. Hierarchies form. You can't prevent that.
Yeah. So you start with. There's generally 3 tiers. I mean, if you get to larger businesses, there will be more than that, but they probably still fit into those kind of 3 broad categories.
Into 3 broad.
Yeah. So we've got the bottoms. That is in like the bottom tier. So these are kind of your trainees, the people new into the business.
Your new recruits. Possibly the apprentice. I know apprentice sounds like a young person, but the people who are at the start of their careers professionally, perhaps.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you obviously move into middle, which is kind of your middle management, or more experienced members of staff leading into middle management. Those are kind of, can basically describe themselves kind of in between two different groups.
So they might be team leaders,
supervisors,
branch managers.
Mm-hmm.
So if this was McDonald's, these would be your branch managers, presumably.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got your top tier, which are kind of your leadership, senior management, leadership sort of areas.
Yeah. And we're just using bottom, middle, top, like as in the physical. Yeah. If you're on a chart, the bottom of the chart.
Or a cake. Let's speak in languages you understand.
Yeah,
cake.
Yeah, I like cake. Cakes and pasties. If I can get pasties in somehow, I'll be over the moon. So we're not sitting, like you say, these are Barry's terms. We're not saying bottom as in worst. We just mean where you are physically on the hierarchy. If there was an organisational chart, where would you be? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about here. And so we're not saying the top is the best either.
No,
because there's a lot of toxic traits that happen at all levels.
Exactly, yeah. And we'll certainly go.
As we're going to go on to.
Yeah, we'll go through them. And obviously, the fourth group that we need to talk about in this is the relationship between these 3 levels and the end customer that you're dealing with.
Right.
Because again, each one of those has a slightly different relationship with the customer.
Also, right. So we're looking at the relationships with each other and then
with their
outside
customers,
as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we're not looking at all stakeholders here. So we're not looking at regulatory bodies. We're not looking at supply chains. We're just talking about the customers and the internal systems.
Because I think the relationship between those different tiers will affect the impact on the customer as well.
So is this there's a famous American airline, I don't know which one it is, if it's Delta or something, but where they kind of went, look, we're going to look after our people and the people will look after. They didn't create this, they just mastered it, I suppose. But there's long been this idea, if your people are all working together with a unified voice and you're looking after each other, you will naturally look after your end customer. Mm-hmm. If you try to look after the end customer but ignore the internal systems, you'll fail.
Exactly.
Is this the topic we're on?
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, again, that's handy, because that's what I thought we were talking about.
Good, yeah, I'm glad I haven't burst your bubble on that one.
So where do we start on this then, Jack?
So I suppose it's looking at kind of the relationships between those different tiers and kind of where they can fall apart and break down. So, for example, if we looked at kind of how the bottom sees itself relation to the middle and the top tiers, they tend to feel, at their worst, feel like invisible.
Right.
And like they're not part of the decision making process, and they're not considered in any decision making processes. So they kind of feel like it can be very demotivating for them, because ultimately they're like, well, what's the point? Like, I don't have any say in any of these things, so why would I bother, contributing towards them? So it's that kind of invisible, and also they feel vulnerable as well. There's that vulnerability because they're like, well, we have no real protection from here. If the proverbial stuff hits the fan,
nobody's got our back. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, we're the first
to
ones
go
out
in
the door.
redundancy runs. That type. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yeah, they feel like they're the most exposed people out of the business.
The least valued, or feel the least valued.
Exactly. Yeah, that ties into that invisibility stuff.
Yeah.
Like there's no.
Nobody cares about us. We could all not turn in tomorrow, and nobody would care, can't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Which of course isn't true, because there would be no widgets running off the line. There would be no customers getting served.
But I think these are very catastrophized versions of themselves. Like they certainly feel like it's a massive generalization, and obviously we know generalizations are a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because they are,
by definition.
They don't cover the nuances of or what people actually think in reality. So that's generally how the bottom perceives itself when looking at the middle and the top tier. If we then look at the middle tier relative to the bottom and the top, is that they're kind of the ones in the middle. It's like the world is tearing apart around them. They're the ones trying to hold it together, because they're essentially getting pressure. Almost, they have pressure in opposite directions, because they've got probably the bottom, the people that they line manage telling them one thing, whilst they've got a message coming down from the top telling them to do a different thing. So they're kind of almost in that impossible situation where it's just like, well, what do we do? Because this is a no-win situation.
So you've got the top saying productivity must improve.
Yeah.
You sort that out, and then you've got the bottom going, yeah, we're totally unmotivated. Nobody cares about us, and all we get is commands to make more.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah.
Like, we need more members of
staff. And you've got the middle kind of going, well, how the hell do you fix that? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, we need, like, the bottom are going, we need more staff, and it's just like, well, I've been told that you just need to be more productive. It's just like,
you just need to work harder.
It's that straightforward, really.
Yeah, just do more. Why don't you do more?
Yeah.
So, okay then. So you got the bottom invisible, unloved, unmotivated as a result, perhaps. You got the middle torn between the two.
Yeah.
Does it matter if that middle is made up of ex-bottoms, or
I mean, you'd like to think that they have a level of empathy, and I feel like that generally comes across because they understand the importance of the bottoms, despite what the bottoms think about the middles.
Especially if some of those middles have been bottoms.
Yeah, exactly. So they should fully appreciate and empathise with the situation they've been in.
The lad who started on the shop floor sticking widgets together, who's now running the shop floor, and the lass who did the same. So, and do you think the bottoms kind of forget that and go, well, Dave must know because he was here? Yeah,
it's kind of, and we'll get onto this in terms of the more toxic traits. The bottom is like a very factionalized. It's a very, they're a very protective sort of species. They all clump together as bottoms, and there's kind of this us and them mentality. So so if somebody moves up to a middle, then they're
say goodbye to Dave. Dave doesn't get invited. He's off the footy team.
Yeah, he doesn't get invited to the pub on a Friday anymore, unfortunately. Yeah. So,
when you say us and them as well, Jack, and obviously I derail the conversation regularly. I know I do this.
I'm used to these curveballs.
The us and them. Do bottoms see middle and top as them?
Yes.
Or do they see them as two groups of them? Once you're not the bottom, or you just them?
It's it's management. Yeah, it's the classic Hollywood.
Any level of management is just management.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
they're not a bottom, basically. They're not one of us.
In the middle are probably thinking that they're neither. So they would go, don't lump us in with them or them. We're neither here.
Exactly. Yeah, we're in the middle here. We've got literally our hands are completely tied here.
So so you got the middle, top.
The top. So this is obviously their perception from the top looking down is like there's just a level of complexity and accountability which they don't fully appreciate. Like they feel misunderstood. Because they're like, I think their perception of the middle and the bottom is that they have all the fun. They're the ones that like have the easy ride, but no one appreciates the complexity or the accountability that ultimately stops with them as the top people.
Because there's a saying, for a reason, the book stops at the top.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that message is lost and not fully appreciated by the other groups, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting because if we could summarize kind of these conflicts, you know, individually, if we looked at like the top versus the bottom, the top feel burdened while the bottom feel oppressed. So that's quite interesting. So the top are burdened with all the operational stuff, the strategic stuff, the accountabilities, etc.
Making sure the wages get paid, making sure the orders come in, making sure they're opened in the right areas, geographically, the right service lines, all of those.
They're literally across everything. Like they have to be as part of their job. So
within this context, you know, of the thinking from Barry Oshry here, do the top accept that the book stops with them?
Yeah, I think.
But do they also presumably feel powerless to affect it because they don't feel the middle and the bottom are
pulling? Yeah, necessarily.
Is that?
I think there is an element of that. I think when he goes into it, I think he's looking at more like how the top kind of cannibalizes itself.
Right. Okay.
So when we look at the toxic traits of the top, it's kind of how they interact with one another.
Right. Okay.
But again, there is that element of that their role is fundamentally misunderstood by the bottom. That you think that we just go around and go to golf days and, you know, fly around in private jets, but in reality, no. Like we're heavily involved. We're the ones we're pulling in late nights, you know, because we have to. So when you come in and ask for a pay rise or something to happen like that, like I've got a million other things to do.
Yeah.
So appreciate that it's not the top of my priority.
And 50 pence an hour doesn't sound much, but there's 4,000 people who want 50 pence an hour for 40 hours a week.
You're not going to get me
50 pence an hour. It's
and you're not going to get me to agree to that on the spot. I've got to go away and crunch the numbers and stuff like.
Because I've also got the bank looking to withdraw their overdraft, and you know, and I'm struggling to get the finance for that new machine, and and you can see so because is it worth running through some more of like some of the toxic traits that we identify at each of these levels?
I'll quickly summarise
because I presume at some point we're going to give some ideas on how we then
start to fix some of these issues.
Yeah, because at the minute we're just beating down on all three groups here, aren't we?
They're all rubbish.
And wherever you've probably, you know, our listeners and viewers have probably caught the thing about that, that's where I am, and they're probably thinking, you can tell they're talking about us. Like, again, this is all the context within what each of the groups think of themselves at the moment, isn't it? This is what we think.
No, exactly.
Although I can identify with each of these groups at the moment.
Yes, no, I can certainly do that as well. But I'll quickly run through kind of the other, kind of summarising the other, like the key relationships, because we need to touch on customers as well before we move on to toxic traits. So as I said, the top feel burdened, the bottom feel oppressed. So again, they're the ones that are, all I hear about is I need to work harder.
In the middle of torn.
And everything. Yeah, the middle are unable to please, basically.
Unable?
Yeah, because they're tied by competing.
We can't have a happy workforce or a happy leadership
it's
structure.
Impossible.
Yeah, right, okay then.
And then obviously the final bit is to talk about the customer and kind of those three groups. So the customer is about, the firm as a result of this feel unreasonably judged. Like the customers have too higher expectations of them. Like, and as a result, like we're actually delivering the service that we're happy about. It's just your fault that you don't appreciate the service that we're giving you.
That's interesting. So if someone is a high level customer, they would presumably interact more with the top tier. Medium sized customer might interact at the middle, in your daily day-to-day customer so using McDonald's again, you walk in, get a burger, the person behind the till goes, that's the burger I'm told to make. I can't affect your satisfaction at all. If you don't like the burgers, don't come here. Whereas, the top end, they're going, they're trying to get, McDonald's fails here as an analogy, but if you're making food and you're trying to get into the supermarkets, they're trying to negotiate at the supermarket level. Why don't you take all of our if I could just get the workforce to make that thing better, you would be happier. Do they all feel like the responsibility to the customer isn't theirs, or it's out of their control?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it in kind of a more classic corporate scenarios that you have a sales director goes out, makes the sale, promises them the earth, and then gets handed over to a manager or something to start the onboarding and all the delivery. And as reality strikes, is like the manager he's got 7 other jobs on right now. So like this unparalleled level of service that they've been promised by the sales director is just not possible. So, and then similarly, the person below him's got 14 other jobs on that they're getting through at the moment. So again, like that level of service diminishes over time. So the end customer as a result feel a bit hard done by. They're like, well, you promised me this and I got this. But then similarly, the customer's like, well, we're just so bloody busy right now. It's like, we can't do that. It's not possible. Like, we've given you the best possible service that we can deliver at that time.
And every one of them's presumably thinking, like every tier is probably thinking, well, why can't this just happen?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense. This is what we do after all.
Yeah, and I think the common theme across all of this is like everyone thinks the other person's being completely unreasonable. When in reality it's just like...
Because top to bottom is, well, just tell them to work hard. Top to middle, tell the bottom to work harder.
Yeah.
Middle to, top is,
cut some slack.
We're sick of telling you we need some more people and you're selling at the wrong price. The bottom to middle is, we need more people. How many times do we keep telling you? Middle to top, we haven't got money for more people. If you were better, we could sell it. Like, you can say this never ends. There's like...
It is, and that's it, and it's just...
So we say this a lot when we're talking to businesses, because obviously, we sit with businesses all day long, and we talk to the different levels within each of the businesses. These are pretty recurring themes, aren't they?
Oh, totally, yeah, and I feel like anyone that's worked in this sort of business before that has these natural tiers can probably resonate with it.
And it's probably any business. It's probably any business with more than probably 10, 15 people will naturally have these tiers, won't it? Probably.
Yeah, I would say so.
It's not a 3-person business. It could be, but it's probably not. But as soon as you've got more than...
But even then, like any form of hierarchy, like you could have a bottom and a top, maybe not a middle.
Yeah.
Or there's a middle.
And it could be 3 people, I suppose, couldn't it?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting.
So it is really interesting, and it's all about perspective. And I don't want to spoil kind of how you can get around some of these ingrained, behaviours and issues within the business. But it all comes from having that sort of sense of providing that sense of perspective to people, so they can empathise more with.
One thing that was quite interesting you said before, Jack, is you said the bottom as a group would feel victimised. I think you said. But then interestingly at the top you said they kind of cannibalise each other. Yeah. Do the top not feel as a unified group then?
It's interesting.
And is the middle a unified? Did they kind of we're top, we've got to stick together, we're middle, stick together?
No, there's a level of...
You didn't give that impression there.
There's a level of competition that this sort of behaviour kind of brings out. Because you kind of go into survival mode and you're like, well, I'll just carve off my bit and I'll focus on that because that's the bit I can control.
Is that what at top you mean, or at middle, or
middle and top?
Right.
So it's kind of
the workers are all in the workers. The bottom are all in it together. They're all fighting.
But again, that makes them sound like they're the idyllic solution, but they have their own problems. So they have this mob mentality.
Oh, which is its own problem. Yeah, because you get groupthink, which is a horrendous thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you create this environment where it's on the face of it, it's very unified and strong, and everyone's looking out for each other. But as soon as you step outside of that, or you voice an opinion counter to what the wider group thinks,
you become one of them.
You're out. Yeah, you're gone.
Yeah.
And
whether you're middle or top, or just still bottom but don't think the same, you're one of them either way, aren't you?
Yeah, and therefore any good ideas.
So if you dare to say, I think the manager's got a fair point there. How dare you? Out.
Yeah. Or if you come up with an idea yourself and like the people are going like, is it worth the hassle and the effort to raise this idea and try and push some change? Because again, there's a lot of...
Because you've got to drag a whole group with you. Yeah.
And they will actually spend more energy preventing the change than adopting it, which again frustrates the middle and the top because they're like, come on, like...
Yeah, we'll give you all the answers here, why don't we just do it?
Yeah, but they'd rather keep the status quo, keep it as it is, form those... And as a result, there's that strong unified front, but then there's still factions within it as well.
Yeah.
So...
Because we're assuming the bottom are all the same here. There might be factory production, front of shop sales.
Yeah.
The marketing team might still, bottom doesn't just mean the worker producing the item, does it?
No,
in this context, there could be 10 different teams within bottom
Yeah.
who are presumably all competing against each
Yeah,
other
and they refuse
within
to
their own
refuse
group
to
things.
refuse to communicate and talk to each other, and it breaks down.
It's not our fault, it's sales' fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you could speak to sales and between you could get to the bottom of it. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that kind of covers off a lot of those negative toxic traits kind of in the bottom, that sort of mob mentality. And I suppose the other thing actually is the village idiot sort of concept, where people feel like just like the village idiot used to walk around and kind of spout ideas off, and people just go, just ignore him, he's the village idiot. That people feel like their ideas aren't listened to because they are in the bottom, like therefore they don't have any meaningful ideas, so they just get ignored.
Right.
Or they're just too scared to talk about them because it will cause, they just want an easy life, don't want to have the hassle of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, okay, yeah.
When we look at the middle side, there's kind of that alienation, as we said. So there's, and it's quite interesting when you look into it, what that turns into reality. So there's no sense of we. So again, you were talking about how you expect the middle to sort of band together and go like, well, at least we can stick together. Ironically, it does the opposite. People kind of just go off on their own thing and kind of start to carve off their own little space. There's no common purpose or mission kind of in that middle tier. Again, because they've been teared in different directions, that everyone takes a slightly different route.
Right.
Like, well, this is the best path I picked through this very
This
difficult
worked for
situation.
me. Yeah.
While someone else will go, well, actually, I feel like this will really work for me. But rather than going,
is the middle consciously doing that because they're trying to fight to the top, or is it just that, or is there something just, or is it ignorance rather than malicious? It's just
I think
we
there is
don't know
certainly
it
an
that
element
way.
of competition between those middles, because again, you're like,
this worked for me, I won't let them know.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone else
I'd much rather do it myself, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it is quite interesting. So they're kind of, as I said, that alienation, so they don't feel part of the teams that they manage. But they actually feel more affinity to them than their own peer group. So you'll have your team that you line manage.
So you're longing to still be part of the bottom.
Yeah. So it ties in with that point
where you spent your formative years, you made a lot of good friends.
Yeah.
And again, you don't feel like you've been welcomed to the middle either.
Exactly.
And actually, the bottom has now shunned you because you're not one of them anymore.
And that feeds into the factions as well, because you're at the bottom too, because you're like, well, you're on my team.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're actually part of this team.
Yeah.
You
You said watch out for common themes here and things you might recognise. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just tying back to that other point you were making, you are looking at the other managers, you're kind of judging them, you're ranking them, going like, well, if the position came up for a top tomorrow, who's kind of in, what's the pecking order? Who's the first one in?
Yeah.
And you're basing your decisions around kind of how you can get up that pecking order. So again, that common sense of purpose.
To be ready, just, yeah.
Yeah. Just to be, have something in your back pocket to be like, yeah, I'm ready
there's
to do
nothing
this.
wrong with being ambitious either. Yeah. But the irony here is actually if the middle all collaborated and worked together towards a common goal, didn't feel alienated, like everyone would be better. This is the weird thing here, isn't it? And I think this is where you then see in some businesses it just works. Everyone does feel like they're on it. Something Craig Smith, Big Picture, said something ages ago on here. He said something like, President, whoever it was at the time, was walking around NASA and he said to the guy who was sweeping the floor, what do you do? And he went, I'm putting a man on the moon. He's like, clearly everyone, like at that point, that sweet moment, it felt like everyone was pulling in one place. And something great happened at the end of it. Exactly, yeah. Yeah. But this shows, and everyone knows this, but nobody can actually figure it out and get it. Exactly, yeah. And this is where this gives you like a really bad, worst case scenario where things can go wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose to summarise that middle bit is that it's that alienation, the powerless, leads to disinterest. It's exacerbated by bad systems as well. And if there's bad systems in place, then it becomes even more difficult because the managers have no way of implementing change. If they do want to put change in, the bottoms are already up in arms about it. The tops at the top are going like, what the hell's going on down here? That worked for us, leave it alone. Yeah. Yeah. We've done it like that for 40 years. What do you
Exactly.
mean we need to change? What do you mean there's computers? Yeah.
But yeah, and then that middle place becomes a very difficult place to be, because you're not just battling competing communication, competing parties between you, but you're also battling yourselves.
Yeah.
So it can be quite a toxic place to be.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens at the top then? What's the toxic traits common at the top? And are we talking about any size top? Could this be a single person top, or?
It's probably when you have more than one person kind of in that top turf position, is what we call it, because top ultimately turf. It's top turfs. So the idea behind it is the top kind of maintains that collective responsibility, and that's essentially carved out between the different people within the tops, which in theory works very well, but in reality, as the proverbial stuff hits the fan, people, similar to when you do in the middle, you kind of carve out your own piece, or you focus purely on that single bit of responsibility that you've got. So you'll be like, well, this stuff's working perfectly well, and I'm just going to focus all my energy at the cost of, protectionism, protecting my own little piece.
You should just be more like me.
Yeah. I'm not going to help you with that, because, if I focus on that, then I can't do the stuff that I want to do, which makes me look really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a more, intense version of the middle, I would say. So as a result,
like higher stakes,
higher
reward if you get it right, but you've got more to lose if you get it wrong.
Definitely, yeah. So as a result, you get a lot of tops that are very good in their specific area, and they've got good systems in place, but there's a fundamental lack of support across like the wider top group, because again, like they're more focused on their stuff, and it's someone else's responsibility to fix that. It's
interesting, because I was talking to a business recently, and it was a father passing, transitioning, let's just say, to 3 sons. Mm-hmm. There's 4 at the top, but you could also arguably here say that the 3 sons aren't really in the top because the father hasn't really let them in yet.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because a lot of what you're seeing, I can see these 3 brothers they've previously been bottom, they've worked their way to what they think is top, but they're arguably at the middle at the moment. Yeah. It's really quite interesting, because they're also kind of going, well, I do this and that's working, so you just need to do more of that. Yeah. They're literally saying those things.
It is, really interesting. So when you've got lots of tops at the top, different areas, those areas, as a result, are undoubtedly going to be ranked of importance. So those people... So you have multiple different departments. Well, my department's the biggest. I've got the most people in. We provide the most.
So if this was Apple, you say, well, I sell. You've got a top in the laptop team. Services, apps. That you might have 5 areas, and if they're all just focusing on their own thing, they kind of go, well, you're not selling many phones. Never mind.
Yeah.
Software's doing great. Well, do you not care that there's been no devices to run your software?
Yeah. So there's that. That idea of equal responsibility soon goes out the window, because actually we hold more responsibility because we are, the biggest department. We do all of the heavy lifting around here. You're not pulling your weight.
If we don't sell phones, no one's got anything to play on, or it all falls down. Yeah,
exactly, and it creates that resentment.
Yeah,
because those people undoubtedly that have those bigger areas are going to be like, well, why aren't you pulling your weight? Why do I have to do everything?
And why is my voice not louder?
Yeah.
Why aren't you listening to me? After all, it's.
I've overseen all of this.
Yeah.
Whilst the lower people are just like, well, that's not really fair, because, there are other factors for why you're the biggest.
Yeah.
But my department, actually, we've grown more than you, and we started from a standing start or something like that. So again, a lot of similarities to this business, where each of the 3 brothers have theoretically taken on a different role, and they're carving out the activities that the father used to do, all of these things, arguably in simpler times with a smaller business. But he's like, but I used to do all of this. So you should have loads of time. I can't understand why you aren't also still producing and have, I'm doing better than me, but yet I'm not going to, so it's Yeah, and it's really interesting, because then when you start to talk about vision and strategy, there's that immediate conflict, because as you said, I should have the loudest voice, I'm the most influential, I'm the biggest person here, so we should do what I say. Which then obviously causes conflict, because it's like, no, it doesn't work like that, we've got collective responsibility, no, I'm more important.
And of course that probably happened in businesses like Blockbuster and Kodak in the past.
Yeah. We should we should buy Netflix. Why would we want to buy that? That's a stupid idea.
Why would we want to buy Netflix? We've got thousands of shops selling, rent.
We're doing it much better.
So there's probably like someone small in Blockbuster who kind of went, I did tell them. I brought them Netflix on a plate and they didn't take it.
Yeah.
Of course they're probably laughing now because Netflix have got their own issues. But
yeah.
There's probably someone in Netflix laughing going, I did tell you. But anyway, that's a different issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those relationships break down, factions create, and therefore that causes a whole different issue in terms of communication, in terms of what gets sent down the line.
Well, anyone still at this point is probably thinking, if you've been in each of these groups, you've probably had a trip down memory lane here. Probably like, I can remember that, that's where I am.
Exactly.
Or if you, whatever group you're in, you're probably thinking, all right then, Jack, what do we do about this?
So it's I suppose I kind of trailed that idea already, a bit of a spoiler. It's essentially kind of sitting down and just having an exercise of complete open and honesty, removing the judgment out of everything, but basically sitting down, these are all of the issues that we're encountering at the moment. You're obviously not naming names, you're not calling people out, this isn't a chance for a slanging match.
It's issue, not the person.
Yeah, it's just...
I think that's,
And like we've done it internally ourselves before.
Yeah.
And I think
they're always fun sessions.
They certainly are,
yeah.
And I think you hear a lot about professional sports doing that sort of stuff when they've gone on like a poor run of form. Like they'll sit down and they'll have one of these sessions where they just go like,
we're scoring goals. It's the midfield, and the midfield's
exactly.
going, well, we got no, the defence are, wow, one mistake and it's a goal. Where was the defence? And the keeper's going, well, I'm watching you all, and you're all like,
Exactly, yeah. But sitting down and having that kind of open and honest conversation with people, and it's about getting your point of view across, because people might not fundamentally appreciate it. Like they don't know.
So again, I keep using the word ignorant in things, and I think people think I'm using it in an accusational way. I just mean unaware of.
Yeah.
So if you're in a team that's doing well and your top, middle, and bottom are all on fire, you kind of go, "What's wrong? Everything's fine." It's like, and that might be. It's like, it's not fine. You got to stop saying everything's fine. Everything isn't working for everyone else. And there might be less of us, but it's not fine over here. Like.
And it is interesting, going back to that point where you were saying like, shouldn't a middle be better placed to empathise with the bottoms if they've been there before?
Yeah.
It's more difficult at the top, because even if a bottom's moved itself to a top, that's over a 15-20 year career.
Yeah, you've long forgotten. So the job is probably nothing like what it used to be.
Exactly. Then they haven't been on the tools, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or a lot of people find like at that top position, like there's a lot of headhunting going on. So you're going to bring someone else in who won't necessarily have that perspective about what it's like to be working.
Who might not have been at that bottom at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also depending on what you do, I don't know how the management structure at McDonald's works, but
are you edging for sponsorship here or something?
It wouldn't kill them to send some nuggets. I will happily have a pile of nuggets here. But so probably if you're running 30 franchises of McDonald's, you could probably do that quite well, having never served a customer at all.
Yeah.
Because the skill set is so far removed that you haven't got to go through the bottom via the middle to the top in some businesses, have you?
No, and that...
the CEO of Ford has probably never worked a production line. So that empathy isn't always there, is it?
No, exactly. So you can't fully appreciate the challenges and the difficulties of the job if you haven't been there yourself. Yeah. So by having those conversations, you're like, right, I didn't appreciate that. So actually, now I understand why you're asking for an extra 15-minute lunch break on your lunch break, because I understand now.
Yeah.
Rather than that'll destroy our efficiency numbers. Like we can't possibly do that. Our productivity is going to fall massively.
Lunch is for wimps.
Yeah.
You can say that when you're not doing a physically demanding job. Burning 4,000 calories a day lifting tyres onto cars,
But similarly, then the tops can go like, well, let's be transparent about our financials here. Like, this is the budget. Like, we can't. You're asking for this. This is how much it's going to cost. Like, we can't feasibly afford that.
Yeah.
So then the bottoms go, right, well, you're not just being, you're not just being deliberately intrusive, or you're not looking after yourself just for yourself.
Yeah.
And again, I think the middles probably benefit the most out of that as well, because they can turn around to both of them and go like, can you just make our jobs a bit easier, please?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like, Jack, that the way to eliminate most of these issues is communication then.
Yeah.
Which sounds easy, but what types of things? So you've talked about transparency and openness. It seems like these things would be less of an issue with just more frequent, structured communication.
Yeah. And that's the $1 million question though. Like, what does good communication look
How
like?
often and what is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you could always just ask.
Yeah.
What do you need to know? Because there might be unasked questions, because you think, well, they're never going to tell us what they're thinking. Well, have you ever asked?
Yeah.
Because actually, for all you know, you've got a middle management kind of going, I would love to tell you what's going on. You don't care. It's like, well, no, we do care. We want to, yeah. So there's probably just a lot of assumptions being made as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're right, it's just cracking that nut in terms of like how you get that information out there.
People out there listening shouldn't beat themselves up, because these things are extremely hard, aren't they?
Yeah, totally.
Because often you move up and down these tiers and never even realise that you've shifted a tier. There isn't always an obvious line between one tier and the other, for instance. You know, if you're in a business where there's 32 levels of, I don't know, on a hierarchy, I can't, you know, in a huge conglomerate, you know, worldwide business, you might think you're in the top, but you're not. You might be in the top of your area, your territory, but to the very top, you're in the middle or even the bottom still, you know. So it's, you can be in multiple tiers all at once as well, which is another world of pain, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's important to note that we kind of laid out the worst case scenario there, the catastrophized version of what potentially can happen, what each tier's like at its worst. And we're not saying that everyone's like that at all. And I think there's probably to a small extent, I think everyone experiences those issues at those different tiers, and even with their customers as well. I think that's probably the fundamental problem with like that customer relationship, is that lack of clarity about the service itself.
I was just thinking as well, you know, Jack, that, you know, because you talked about groupthink and mob mentality.
Very Orwellian.
But actually that could be a good thing, because if you can mobilise a mob to do a good thing, that's how change happens, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's getting buy-in.
Yeah. So if you say the bottom is a mob, we did apologise in advance for the language. Yeah. This is how it's defined within the thing, isn't it? But, you know, if you've got a mob which isn't doing what you want, if you find a way to just switch that mob to do the thing you want, that's when you start to get a truly great service delivery at that level, isn't it? And if you can get a unified middle and a non-cannibalising top, it's just, you know, that's how you can really become a great business, isn't it?
Essentially, yeah. You make it sound easy though.
Well, it is easy. I've summarised it in 30 seconds at the end.
How can it be?
Mobilise the mob, unify, you know.
Sounds like you're trying to bring down capitalism with that.
Well, that's the problem, because again, you kind of go, well, let's not have hierarchies then. But I don't think you can avoid hierarchy, because in any walk of life, a hierarchy will naturally, it will exist. It doesn't matter. You might go, we're against it. There's always still someone who is more vocal and more influential. Yeah. Even in a flat structure, there is still someone who everyone turns to and go, what do you think? So you can pretend you can have a structure that doesn't have a hierarchy, but I think there would always be a hierarchy.
Of course, yeah. Like you had a flat structure, and then
good reason. There needs to be as well, I would argue.
Because you have a flat structure. Customer complains. Who does he go to? Oh, I'll speak to them. And then suddenly he's like, oh, well, I deal with all the complaints. Like, surely then I should be more. Maybe I should be more responsible for. Yeah.
Because there's always someone who goes, well, I'm doing more.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay then. Well, so you can't. So flattening the hierarchy isn't the answer, I think, personally. I think working within it and understanding the weaknesses and work to solve them is the way. What's the biggest thing people get wrong on this then, Jack? Just, I mean, we might have already alluded to this, or you trailed it, but what's the biggest thing that goes wrong on this?
I think it's a case of people not ignoring kind of the early warning signs of this stuff taking effect. Staff churn is obviously massively important when looking at this stuff, because that just shows general dissatisfaction. If
you bottom are in and out a revolving door, then
and
you've lost them.
Yeah. And particularly if you're losing the ones that you really value.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who are like, well, why did he leave? Well, I feel like I couldn't speak out, couldn't make a difference. And that's more to the fact
you're like, oh wow, you're one of the few that I was even listening to.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, so if you even think that, then you're getting it wrong, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose shying away from those difficult conversations or those opportunities to be transparent with people and tell them what you think.
Yeah.
And doing it in a constructive way. Because I don't want tops to feel like they can go, right, I can go and tell the bottoms what I really think.
I'm going to tell them what I think.
Yeah. I'm being transparent, I'm being open.
Tell them what you're thinking, rather than, it might be a better way to phrase it, make sure they're involved, they know what's happening and why.
Yeah.
And you haven't got to tell them everything. No one needs to know everything. People don't want to know everything. They just need to know enough to understand what they're trying to do, don't. Well, there you go. Seeing systems, top, middles, bottoms. Top turfs, middle, what are they called?
Makes it sound like some kind of prison drama or something like that.
What's the, so you had the top turfs, middle
alienation.
Middle alienation.
And then the bottom, mob mentality.
Mob, invisible mob.
There you are.
That was Seeing Systems. Barry Oshry.
Yes.
For more reading, if you want to go away and make sense of any of this, you might need a bit more.
It was a whistle-stop tour of it.
That was a brief tour of Seeing Systems from myself, Marty, and from Jack. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, we do like it when people reach out and ask us questions, find out more.
Definitely, yeah.
Until next time, thank you.